I would like to know a few things. I am still like one of the world's most curious old ladies. And one of the things I'd like to know is, do monsters take their victims to therapy? While this monster they're being is still an ongoing thing, especially. Okay, that would be one of my questions to my husband's ex, who is actually wife first. I'm wife third, in case you didn't hear my little video about it, or watch, or screencast, because I'm not one to do videos. I'm just not into it, I don't guess. Okay, that would be one of the questions. Because I still think my husband was slighted in a big way. In a bigger way than what I at that time in 95 had a mind to realize. Given the fact that I was on a whole lot of medicine that I'm not on now. And so have my capacity to try to understand it, which I have been on a roll about, I guess you could call it, for quite a long time. Okay, the so-called monster that raped his own daughter, they said 2,100 times over the course of 2 years. That's at the same time his and my sex life was in full swing. Okay, married 10 years. It was regular, it was habitual, it was, pretty well. We had all the wrinkles ironed out, you might say, and didn't have to spend the time experimenting with it, because we knew by that time exactly what we were doing and knew what our goal was. We didn't have to, is this how, honey? Okay? As delicately as I can state that. Alright? Do monsters, while raping their so-called victims, take them to therapy? Do monsters who they say raped someone in their own family 2,100 times let that person have access to knives in the kitchen while they're doing chores for the family, so that when that so-called 2,100 timer guy can take his VA issued medication, go lay down on the couch and crash for several hours while this so-called victim has access to the knives or cutlery or craft tools or other tools in the house, either yard or household DIY tools, woodworking tools. Okay, does this so-called 2,100 rapist monster allow his so-called victim to go off with his in-laws overnights, over weekends, for trips out of town, at the cabin at the lake, risking then too, as well as he would have by taking her to therapy, where the only time he and I attended was the initial time, the advisory time, initial initial let's get to know each other real quick basis. The rest of the time was all hers. Do you see where I'm coming with that? We're talking opportunity. Opportunity for the so-called victim to do something on her own behalf long before assimilated, or how would I say it, a so-called rape situation would turn into 2100 times. We're not talking one time, two time, call the cops, I'm out of here, I'm a runaway, I'll stab you, I'll cut your eyes out while you sleep, I'll call 911. It's 2100 times, not one or two. Because her opportunity to get help wasn't just a few times, it was many times. As many times as we would go shopping at some place that was 25 to 30 minutes away, because when we lived clear on the east side of town, I know the sign out on the highway says 18 miles to the base, but from our house it was probably closer to 20, 21 miles. Okay, and stop to get gas, go to not only the commissary and bring home a big whopping bunch of stuff, but to the BX2. Okay, these were sometimes 4 hours and other times 4 plus if we ate lunch, got gas, the drive back. Would this so-called monster allow his so-called victim trail off up to a commune to visit her mother without putting up some kind of fight? Or allow this so-called victim to go to Sunday school and church without him, who was a member of a different church at that time, the Spiritualist Church in first Lee Summit, but then Independence after our preacher Edna moved. Would this so-called monster, who had a known heart problem that required he take not only nitroglycerin but other medications as well, and one that was severe enough to have landed him in the hospital at one point for an extended stay of 10 days, would he be risking doing something that would cause him to have to take more medication during something that was called a rape, which to me is something that would take more energy and aggression at a faster pace than a regular sex life? More rambunctious, possibly getting scratched or hit or bit or kicked, if not stabbed, gouged, poked, or sliced. Because my spouse, I came to realize the other day, and he's never spoken of this, but I'm going to. I started believing that a lot of his plea was based on the fact that he knew how much his heart could take. And if he tried to fight it, what they wanted of him, which was for him to not fight, that he was putting his own medical condition at risk, putting himself at risk, and if anything would have happened to him by that risk taking, that it would have been on him, not on anybody else. Because in this world, you've got to know for yourself sometimes when to say enough's enough, when to walk away. And also, along that same notion of him to take a guilty plea, he knew that his daughter had some issues, sparking him to get her help with an exit therapist in Columbia, Missouri, named Shelly Osana. And he didn't want to further harm her already possibly destroyed self-ego that had been harmed previously at the commune while they were brainwashing her. Because I've done a fair amount of research on that. And yes, that commune can be found. It's in Davis City, Iowa. And I believe it's called the Brotherhood of Christ. The church part of it is. And it had been reported and complained about by other people who have family members there, and they would like to help them, but it's so risky. It's like a dangerous endeavor, which we found out the hard way for ourselves. But it had been noted on a website, the International Cultic Association International, or something like that, that it was a mind control cult to the fullest extent, which they denied when it came to family members of my husband's daughter, the so-called rape victim of 2,100 times. Family members that broke away from that group and went to exit therapy, more intensive than what we were getting in Columbia, Missouri, up in, I believe it was Michigan or Minnesota, and it was like a 3-month program for their whole family. And when they wrote to Karen actually, but when they did, they included some information on that in-house exit therapy, and that's the only way we had a clue even to what it was called. It was called exit therapy. But there was no way for us to have a clue what we needed. So when he read that and got the info, he began to search to find someone. And he found Shelly Osana. But a lot of times his therapy will fall back on the therapist when it goes bad. And there are cases of that on the net. So maybe that'll be where I pick up here after this is over, because my time is very short right now, like 10 seconds. So see you in the next video, and thank you very much for watching. 2/2/2016.